Welcome back to another episode of the All Things Dead podcast, a podcast where you can get everything in the Walking Dead universe, from The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead World Beyond, and any movies we hopefully get, any other spin-offs that we might get in the Walking Dead universe can be found here on the All Things Dead podcast. Before we go any further into this episode, if you're listening to this in audio form, please give it a review, stars, rating, anything like that. Follow it, subscribe to it if you can. Share it out. It just helps get this out there. I appreciate it so much. And then the video version can be found on the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel. Until I decide to make the All Things Dead podcast its own YouTube channel, it can be found on the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel. The Coach Steve Show is another podcast that I do. It's mainly sports, football related, but there's plenty of other non-football stuff on there from Marvel. Talking about movies and other things other than sports. But if you go to the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button. Go to the playlist tab. There will be a playlist titled the All Things Dead podcast where you can find the video version of this if you'd rather watch it on YouTube. So again, it can be listened to anywhere you listen to your podcast. The YouTube channel is the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel. Please, on all of it, thumbs up, like, subscribe. Please leave a comment, a review, anything like that to help get this better, helps get this out there, help share it out. I appreciate it so much. We are moving right along with our recap. We're rewatching The Walking Dead as much as possible as time allows me to. So last episode, we finished episode 4. This one, we are now on season 1, episode 5, and there is only 6 episodes, so we are getting close to wrapping up the first season of The Walking Dead. And I don't know about you guys, if you've watched them before and you're just listening to this podcast. If you've never watched it before, I hope you're enjoying it. But the ones that have that are listening to this again, I recommend you go back and rewatch it. There are things that I forgot about. The way it's filmed, the way it looks, the way the walkers are, the way we know so much about the world in The Walking Dead that we just don't know. And just episode by episode, you're like, oh yeah, that's how they found out, or this has happened, or, anything like that. And just to see where it's come from. So we are now on season 1, episode 5, titled Wildfire. Like we talked about in the last episode seemed like a filler episode up until the end. This one, again, if you want to title it a filler episode, that you can. Because not a huge amount of excitement happens in this one, but a lot of dialogue, a lot of moving forward. And I think we'll move forward in the next episode even more. But we have to deal with the aftermath of not finding Merle. So we have to deal with the way Daryl feels for not finding his brother. And we got to deal with the aftermath of the walkers attacking the camp. And like I said in the end of the last podcast, we are focusing on a small proportion. I don't know if it's a small portion, but we're focusing on just a certain portion of this group. If you go back and watch, we see Shane, Lori, Carl, Morales and his family, even though we don't see his family a whole ton, but they are there, his wife and his 2 kids, Carol, Ed, Andrea, Dale, Jim, Glenn, Daryl, Merle, like all these people. But there are people around them that we were never introduced to in these episodes, and these are the ones that were killed off from these walkers, whether they were just bit, whether they got eaten. Like there in this episode, you see Ed, and we'll get to that in a second, where Ed is completely eaten. So now we have to deal with the aftermath of this. We start the episode with Rick talking on a walkie-talkie to Morgan. Because remember, in the first episode where he met Morgan, they had the police walkie-talkies that have this long range, and they only go from each to each. It doesn't get picked up by any other radio. Remember, he said, every day at dawn, I will get on and talk if you are headed out to Atlanta at dawn, like when the sun is rising. And that's how we start this episode off. Kind of a reminder that Morgan's out there. This last episode, we saw how other people were out there. Well, this is a reminder. Morgan's out there, and Rick's basically telling him, hey, do not go to Atlanta. It is not what we thought it was. It's not safe. We are in the woods. If you're making this way out, come to us. And then just said, you got to be careful because we were attacked last night. We lost a lot of people. So take care of yourself. Please find your way to us. So that's a nice callback because a part of me watching these episodes are like, oh yeah, Morgan's out there. Hopefully he doesn't go to the city. So we've got to pick up with the aftermath of a bunch of people getting bitten, a lot of people getting killed. The big shocking death, or the one that's hurting the most, is Andrea lost her sister Amy. When the episode ended, she was staring over the body, and that's kind of where she is when they're doing this, and you're seeing them. They have to go around, and they're the only way to kill a walker is through the brain, and they're going around making sure that people are stabbed, and because they said if you get bit or scratched, you die and you come back as one of them. So these people are there. They have to go around and basically puncture the brain, and they're going around doing so. And then you see them burning some of the walkers, and then now they have to deal with this. They have to deal with how Rick and Daryl and T-Dog and Glenn were gone, which we'll get to. Then they've got to deal with what just happened, how they get here, where they come from. Now they got to deal with cleaning up and everything. And Daryl, you could tell, lived in the woods. He's putting people down, and they're dragging bodies into a pile. And Glenn's trying to tell them, hey, we burn the walkers we don't know, but the people in our group, if something ever happens, we have to bury them. That's just what we do. And Daryl does not agree with this. Daryl basically is what's the point in burying people? It's all the same. And, then he basically said, you guys left Merle for dead, and this is what you guys get. You had it coming for treating Merle like another human being like this. So Daryl is trying to show his frustrations, what happened with Merle, frustration of coming back to this. The way Norman Reedus is acting here and the way the camera works, there's times where something happens and it looks like Daryl's trying not to care, but it looks like he does care, and we'll get to certain scenes later on where it kind of proves that. Now they have to deal with Andrea just staring over Amy's body, and they're trying to talk to her, saying, hey, we have to take care of this. She's going to come back as a walker. We don't need that. We don't need anybody else getting hurt. Lori tries to talk to her and everything. Rick's like, I'm going to tell her how it is, and she pulls a gun on him, and they're just leaving her be and just staring over the body. She's in shock. So they just kind of leave her be, and now they have to deal with this. They're burning walkers that they didn't know, and then the people that they knew, they want to bury them. Glenn has it. Rick kind of agrees that they want to bury these people. Now we got to deal with other things. One thing to deal with, we have not seen this really yet. We've seen people get killed. Haven't really seen anybody just get scratched or bit. And Jim, who we had to deal with last time, it's discovered that he was bitten. He got bit on his ribs. So now here's another situation we haven't dealt with in these episodes. We've seen people get killed. They get told not to get scratched, don't get bit. But what happens when someone does get bit? What happens? Morgan kind of described it. You have a fever, it kills you, your bones are shatter and all this stuff. You're very weak. So we've heard it, but we haven't seen it yet. So now we have to come to grips with the group saying, what are we going to do with Jim? And of course, Daryl immediately goes to, we just kill him. And they're talking about, we can't just kill him. What do we do? And then another thing they have to come to grips with is they're out in the open in this woods. Yeah, I understand what Shane was probably doing. We live off the land. We can hunt, we can fish, we have tents. We're up on this hill where they shouldn't be able to climb up to us. We're not in a building. We're not around people. We're not this. So in a way, I get it, but at the same time, well, first of all, your cans and string things suck, but you're in the middle of nowhere, and they could just show up. So Rick is trying to say, we should help Jim. And I believe the dialogue came from the first episode where they talked about, You have the city, there's stuff, but there's also maybe the CDC. They are working on a cure. So Rick brings this up saying, what if we get Jim help? We don't need to kill him. What if we get help? What if we go to the CDC? Daryl's like, nope, we're just going to kill him. He goes to kill him. Rick puts the gun to his head and says one of the famous lines of The Walking Dead, which is funny now thinking about everything that has happened, saying we don't kill the living. So again, Rick is holding on to the old days. Daryl's just kind of let it go. Even Shane agrees. Shane is saying like, yeah, we're not going to kill him. But Rick's bringing up going to the CDC. They can't stay there anymore. What if they go to the CDC and maybe they are working on a cure? Is there a way to help? Is there a way to do this or that? So a lot of things they're dealing with right now, and they're panicky a little bit. And then we finally kind of get dialogue as to why Andrea is just kind of staring over Amy. Yeah, she's in shock. She lost her sister. They just had that talk the episode before about how their father taught them how to fish and pretty much survive. Like, who knew the dad knew there'd be an apocalypse. Dale does come over and say, I just want to pay my respects. And there's this connection that Amy and Andrea have with Dale, and Dale has with Andrea, like a father figure type or a grandfather type figure. And he's just talking, and he tells about his wife. And so we learn that Dale's wife died of cancer, and then says how much the girls meant to him. And then she pulls out the dolphin, and it just clicks, and Dale's like, this is her birthday. So now it comes to did she not only just lose her sister in front of her, getting her neck ripped out, and now she's going to turn into a walker, that day is her birthday. So now it makes sense as to why she is just looking over the body, and why this is, I mean, it hurts so much because it's her sister. I think they talked about in the last episode her parents were gone, so just this is all hard for her. Then we finally get some dialogue with Rick and Shane. Rick's just like, just say it. And Shane basically says, if you didn't take the people with you, if you, Daryl, Glenn, and T-Dog didn't go, we'd have more manpower here. So if they would have shown up, you guys would have been here, and we may have not have lost as many people. Rick's rebuttal was the only reason why they were able to kill so many of them is because they got back literally like a minute or two after the walkers showed up, and they were able to kill them because they had more ammo and more guns. So his rebuttal was, well, if we didn't have the guns, we wouldn't have killed much of them, and we still would have lost some people. So now we're starting to see, I talked about in a previous episode of this podcast, and you can kind of see if you're rewatching it, there's already a little rift between Rick. There was this happy moment, but right now there's this little rift, and you saw it when he wanted to leave and go get Merle, and they're dealing with this, and then they took Jim into the RV so he could relax, and then Daryl does come up and say, why are we wasting our time and our energy burying people? Wasn't the deal that when people were walkers, we burned them? That's what we do. And then he looks at both of them and says, they need to know who's boss. One kid, he calls Glenn Chinaman, which, yeah, okay, Daryl, saying they have to know who's in charge. They have to know the rules. And Rick's like, there are no rules. And then I'm not a fan of Lori at all. She does make a good point. She said, we have to hold on to some part of life. We have to bury these people because we knew them. We have to grieve. We have to send them off properly. We have to hold on to some type of humanity. And Rick's kind of in the same boat of, he's trying to hold on to humanity of like, we don't kill the living. He doesn't want to hurt people. He's trying to help people. The only way he'll look out for himself is his family. Like, he was doing everything he can to find his family. And then now that they're there and they're with people that protected them, he is like, I have to protect these people. I have to do what I can for these people. We all have to work together. And he's a police officer deep down. Like, you don't become a police officer, to not help people. And that's who he is. Shane is on the fence. It looks like he's helping people, but it's like he's making different decisions. So now there's this, you can see there's a little riff of who's in charge. Shane seemed to be the one in charge. Rick comes along and maybe he's in charge. So at this point in the episode is pretty interesting of what's happening. Then we finally have where Amy turns into a walker, and Andrea wasn't the biggest fan of. Now at this moment, right before this, you're like, okay, you're sympathizing with her, but then she's like, she puts her ear down to Amy when she's coming back to life as this walker, and is like, do you think she's going to talk to you? Think she's going to hold a conversation? She's going to attack you. She's going to bite you. She's going to kill you. And she finally puts her down. But at the moment, like, you dummy, like, what are you doing? So they bury these people. They stand there. It's a sad moment to see Andrea bury her sister. And then we finally have a little dialogue with Rick and Lori. And Rick's like, he wants Lori to say that he's right, that he was okay in going. And Lori's in a weird position because, she's married to Rick. She thought Rick was dead, so we talked before, had relations with Shane. And who knows what kind of relationship her and Shane had before the apocalypse. Like I brought up, it's weird that Shane talks about Rick's marriage to him in the police car. So you got that, and she finally says, you're both not wrong, but you're both not right either. Of if Rick was there would have been more people to help out, but you're right. You had to do the thing. You try to do the right thing to get Merle. Try to do the right thing of, bring guns back. She gets it. She understands it. But she's like, I can't say you're right or wrong and all this stuff. And then Rick goes, what about the CDC? Like, should we go? And then Shane had brought up before, I forgot to say this and I apologize, brought up, Rick said, let's go to the CDC. And Shane's trying to say, like, yeah, they said that when the world fell. Because remember, Rick was in a coma when this happened. So for him, he doesn't really know what was going on besides what Morgan has told him. And so Shane's like, yeah, we heard that all before. Like, this isn't anything new. So we've heard this before. If there's a secure place, we got to go find an army base. And they said the army base is probably 100 miles. The CDC is closer. And so Rick makes a case about that. So Rick is looking at Lori like, where should we go? And again, she's in this weird spot where, yeah, she had this argument with Shane, but there's probably a part of her that's like, I kind of still like Shane, but my husband's here. So she's kind of like split in the middle. She's saying how there needs to be a conversation about it, of course, but, she kind of can't pick. And so I think Rick is confused a little bit with this. Is he noticing something about Lori and Shane? It's yet to be seen. Jim's not doing so hot. He's in the RV. There's temperature. The fever's kicking in. He's spitting up blood. I think Rick feels guilty. Like, because of this, Rick feels really guilty. Because he comes in there and talks to Jim and says, I want to get you help. And Jim basically is like, I'm going to die. And Rick's like, nope, I want to get you help. I don't want to kill, like, none of that. I don't want any of this to happen. So this seems to be kind of driven to go to the CDC because Morgan talked about it. I think Rick feels guilty because Shane's blaming him. He can kind of see Lori's not fully blaming him, but is not blaming him. So it feels a little of this guilt. Where it starts to get interesting for me is outside of the RV where Rick's inside, Lori's outside, Shane comes up to Lori and says, you need to talk to your husband. Going to the CDC is not right. We need to go to, I can't remember the place, Fort Mattis, I think, or I can't remember what the army base was. He said that's where we need to go. And, she's basically like still mad at him and is basically like, screw you, like, he's my husband. I'm not going to do this or that. And, you don't have the choices to say that certain things. And basically Shane goes, these are habits I'm going to have to break. Or like, I don't bring your marriage into this. And she goes, well, no one else will bring my marriage into this, but you will. And he goes, these are, habits I have to break. And Rick hears this and goes, what habits? And so immediately Shane has to come up with a lie of he wants a plan. He wants to know what's going on and this and that. Now, during this moment, if you guys are rewatching this or watching it for the first time, look at how Rick is looking at them. He can kind of tell something's amiss. Something ain't right. That's kind of what he's probably thinking to himself. I'd be thinking that to myself, that they're talking, they're whispering. He comes out, he can kind of tell they changed it. Then Rick and Shane go out in the woods. I don't know if they're hunting. I think that they're out there to talk. They have their guns with them. They're talking. Shane's basically saying, Rick, if you weren't out, you got to protect your own. If you would have thought about your own, if you weren't thinking about other people, maybe this wouldn't happen. We'd be here. Like, you got to start thinking about your family. Let's go to this place. Let's not go to the CDC. And Rick goes, maybe if you had a family, if it was your own family, you would understand. And this is where Shane's feelings for Lori and Carl come in, because then Shane just flips and says, what do you mean? Say that again. What did you mean? Rick was just basically saying, if that was your wife and your child, you would feel differently and do everything you could for them. I think Shane understands that's what he's saying, but Rick's saying this out of what he's thinking. Shane is like, goes up to him and says, I'm the one that got them out. I'm the one that kept them safe. And Rick's like, I will never be able to repay that. So here's what's going through their minds. Rick is saying, if that was your wife and your blood-born child, you would think differently and do things a little differently, or think the way he's thinking. Shane is thinking, that was going to be my wife. That was going to be my child. Because I told you, if you listen back to other episodes I've done, or go back and rewatch this, it was weird how Shane literally was trying to act like Carl's father. The way he was acting, and, he wants to be with Lori. He could tell there's feelings for Lori. So he's bringing that in, and all of a sudden they hear like a tree or a stick break, so they have to split up and go look and see what it is. If it wasn't for that, I'm sure it would have slipped out. Shane would have gotten mad enough to say something. Where it gets interesting, and I feel like we're going to have to remember this, Shane is looking down his shotgun barrel, looking around because they're seeing if there's a walker or whatever made that noise. When he turns, his barrel is right onto Rick. And there's this moment, Shane has a look of, and is pointing at Rick for a good, 15 to 20 seconds, not moving, just staring right at Rick down the barrel. And the look on his face of, I could kill you. I could kill you. So in this moment, we're from Shane saying Rick's his best friend to, I'm about to kill you. And he stops, turns. Dale saw the whole thing. Dale was watching him. And Shane's like, okay, let's go. Shane knows that Dale saw this. So now Dale's in a predicament. He sees Shane was pointing the barrel down and staring at Rick, and to kill him. So this is going to be interesting going forward. Shane's not happy Rick's back. Shane is not happy that Lori's not with him. Shane is mad because Lori said, you told me my husband was dead and I hate you. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to my son. And that's the big part. The sub part to that is I think he's frustrated because he was the leader. He was kind of in charge because he could survive. Now Rick has come in and he's kind of in charge. He's like the one people are looking to. And I think they're looking to him because he is trying to keep some of the pre-apocalypse humanity around, where everybody else is, I don't know if you want to call it adapting. I don't know if you want to call like they're just used to it. Like, he's not used to this. Like, you got to think. They are way ahead of apocalypse on Rick. We don't know how long Rick was in a coma. We don't know how long this apocalypse has gone on for. We're just guessing a year. Just because of the facial hair on Rick, we're guessing months. We don't know. No idea. At this moment. So they all the group comes together. They all kind of talk about it. Lori says, Rick, just go with your gut. And they kind of come to a decision of, okay, let's go to the CDC because it's closer. If nothing happens, we try to get supplies. We try to survive, and we go on to an army base. Shockingly, Morales and his family says they have family, I think, in Birmingham, Alabama. They're going to try to drive there, so they leave the group. So now we're down to a smaller group, and they hit the road. They're going to try to take Jim to the CDC. Sadly, not even to the CDC. Jim says, hey, the fever's too much. His bones are like breaking with every bump. He asks Rick in good conscience, he is fully aware, leave me on the side of the road. He wants to be with his family, his wife and kids. We're eaten by walkers, so he wants to be with them. So we have this very sad send-off. They put Jim by a tree. He wants to lay by the tree. They all kind of say their goodbyes, and we lose another character. We lose Jim. We don't see him turn into a walker. He doesn't want a gun to shoot himself. He just kind of wants to go. So we lose Jim. Now they're traveling to the CDC, and then we finally get a glimpse of a doctor in the CDC. We get a glimpse into someone on a camera, and he says, "This is Jenner." And he starts talking about, it's been 365 days since a report of something. And so we assume this means since the first look at a walker, because again, all we know is that these people, they come back from the dead. They eat people. They're doing this or that. So we see a guy on a camera saying, and is just saying that. And then it shows he's in a suit, talking about he's not sleeping well. Living underground, he doesn't know how long it's been. Shows him like a hazmat suit, grabs something, I think it said TS-19 maybe, and it just looks like a brain. He's doing experiment on it, doing something, and then he spills something on it. He has to get cleaned off and it explodes. And shows that he goes, nope, that was the last sample I had and everything else, and shows this big room with computers. And at this point, you have to assume this is the CDC, or is this going back in time? And, we're not sure. And then Rick and the group show up, and they come to the CDC, and it just looks like a war zone had happened. They have the sand bags piled up, hundreds of dead bodies of walkers, and they're plugging their nose. It stinks. They get to the door. It's shut. And they're slamming on. Then, like I just said, it confirms this is the CDC. It shows this Jenner guy looking at a camera saying they're there, and he goes, no, please go away, please go away. And then panic starts to hit. Rick's like, they're telling Rick no one's here, and he's trying to say, how's the door shut? Someone has to be here. Walkers start walking up on them. Daryl's like, he made a bad call, and the only good thing about Shane so far is Rick. We have to go to, it's Fort Bennett. Sorry, it just came to me. We have to go to Fort Bennett. No one's blaming you. This was a shorter drive. We've got to get somewhere away from here. We tried. No one's blaming you. Everything else was a good thought. And this is why I said earlier, this is like Rick feeling guilty. So if this plan doesn't work, yeah, Rick can blame himself. People can blame Rick. But if it doesn't work, people like Shane and everybody else can blame themselves, because they're looking at Rick saying, this is your fault. If you were here, we wouldn't have had people killed, blah, 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 blah. Maybe Jim wouldn't have been bit. You wouldn't have had this idea, like all this stuff. So if anybody, these people are to blame for Rick feeling this way, but it's guilt. Rick is thinking, since he's told this, if they would have stayed, they would have more power to fight people and everything else. So Rick is freaking out, like, open the door. Then the camera moves. And so he's like, please open up. We're desperate. They're trying to get Rick out of there. They're talking about have no gas, no stuff. They're trying to kill the walkers around him that are walking up on him. It's getting dark. And then Jenner finally does the right thing. And the episode ends with this door opening. And that's kind of how we end. I like how this... Now we only have one more episode left. I like how the season starts off with a long episode introducing things, and then it kind of is exciting. You're learning more, and then the last episode was like a filler episode up until the end. This one was kind of a filler episode, but this one you consider more of a dialogue thing, which, like I said, a lot of these episodes I do not remember some things. But what I do remember throughout the seasons, we'll get a lot of filler, quote-unquote, dialogue episodes where a lot happened, something big happened, and then now there's events that have happened in certain episodes, like most TV shows, and then it builds up, and you have to have some type of dialogue. We got some dialogue. Daryl had some dialogue. We finally got dialogue with Rick and Shane. We finally have some things going on there, and then we finally have Rick and Lori have some dialogue, and then Rick now, I think, has some suspicions. And it's just opening up. We're finding out there's more people. Now you're at the CDC with this guy. What does he know? He was talking about how in this camera that he was recording, I think, to keep records of, he was doing experiments, so he knows. So now it's just exciting to see what's going to happen next. And that's how it ends. We have one more episode in season 1. There was only 6 there, and then the rest of the season, or the rest of the show, I believe there's 16 episodes in each season. Usually your first seasons of shows have the least, just because you don't know if it's going to continue to go and get picked up by networks. But that's how it is. We have one more episode left. So the next episode of the podcast, we'll discuss season 1, episode 6. Then we'll be done with season 1, and then we got to get to season 2, and there'll be 16 episodes of that. If you're rewatching this, I hope you're enjoying it. If you've never watched The Walking Dead before and you just want to listen to this to find out, I hope you're listening and enjoying it. Again, the video version can be found on the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel. It's my other podcast. If you please click the subscribe button and go to the playlist, there will be a playlist for just the All Things Dead stuff until I finally make the decision to make a YouTube channel just for the All Things Dead stuff. The audio version can be found anywhere you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe, leave a review, follow it, share it out. It's greatly appreciated. We'll see you guys next time when we recap season 1 of episode 6 of The Walking Dead.